Captain Kong Woo-jun has completed the rescue of the survivors. He contacted the center to announce that he would enter the combat zone. 12 years ago, the Chinese virus spread around the world. People infected with the disease began to turn into zombies. A few years later, people with mutant antibodies appeared with special powers. They are called superhumans. Currently, superhumans are carrying out the mission to rescue survivors from the remnants of the virus. Superhumans will be guided to stabilize and restore strength by body contact. After fighting a series of zombies, his wrist began to ache. The sound from the control center rang out. Captain Kong, how long has it been since he was last guided? Let's see, 1 month. His answer made the other party worry and shout. Does he want to die? With that body, he was sent alone? Before he finished speaking, a zombie appeared in front. He ran quickly forward, using powerful abilities to break its neck. Then he reported, there are no living creatures in Area B, mission accomplished, I will return to the base. The head on the other side worriedly reminded him. When he returns to headquarters, he must receive proper guidance. If not, he will really explode. It is very important for experts to receive guidance through contact over a regular period of time. If the expert is not guided, he cannot control his own power. In the end, he will be swallowed up and killed by that power. Behind him, skinny, bony arms suddenly stretched out. Next, a series of zombies crawled up from the rubble. He reported to the center that a large number of zombies in Area B all appeared here. The center asked him if he needed support, he immediately refused without hesitation. A series of zombies rushed in, he held up his hand, his ability made the zombies around him float in the air. Then he suddenly let go of his hand. They all fell to the ground at once, their heads smashed. The control center was full of praise. Indeed, he is an S-level expert, but even so, he still has to receive guidance. I know, he replied. Suddenly, a human hand emerged from the rubble. Seeing this scene, his heart suddenly pounded, his strength surged uncontrollably, making him tremble and fall. Dangerously, a hand reached out and grabbed his hand. 10 years ago, when Woo-jun was about to fall down the stairs, a boy firmly grabbed his hand, trying to prevent him from falling. He is a teacher of the medical team arranged by the government for each school. This was the first time the two met. Losing focus, the sound of applause woke him up. He asked him, what will happen if you are bitten by an infected person? Fever, rash, consciousness blurred, turned into a zombie. His answer pleased the other person. He patted his head with a bright smile. After school, he shyly ran after him to ask his name. Teacher, can you tell me your name? What for? The other person asked back. He blushed with embarrassment, actually. Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly said, it's okay if you don't know. At the same time, he took his hand and put it on his neck. Then he laughed and continued, anyway, I'm already dead. I'm dead, you killed me. He widened his eyes in astonishment, while his hand unconsciously tightened around the other's neck. He squeezed so hard on the throat that the other person could no longer speak. Die, die, the sound echoed in his head. In a hallucination, his hands clung tightly to the neck of the person guiding him. He glared and asked, what are you going to do? The other person stammered, Captain Kong fainted before the explosion threshold, I carried out the guidance. He loosened his hand and told the other person to leave. Looking at his trembling hands, he tried to calm himself. Yes, that person was dead. In a laboratory, scientists were preparing to cancel hibernation. The person lying in the cold incubator was Kevan. When Hee-won woke up in the hospital, he felt like he had had a long dream. Are you awake? Someone asked, so he quickly got up and tried to get out of bed, but unexpectedly fell to the ground because his legs had no strength. The doctor hurried over to help him up and asked his name. Hee-won, he still remembered his name clearly. The doctor explained that he had been in hibernation for 2 months due to serious injuries. He was very surprised when the doctor said he had been put into a frozen state. After talking to him, the doctor went out to meet the guardian. He followed and saw the person in front of him, happily calling out, Director Lee. Seeing a familiar face, he sighed with relief and quickly asked about his parents. But the answer was that they were busy. Knowing that they were usually busy, he was a little sad because after all, their son had just woken up after 2 months. While driving him back to the hotel, Director Lee revealed that he was found to be an S-level guide during treatment. He didn't feel his power much, maybe he would know when he came into contact with the superhuman. He carefully observes the unfamiliar city in front of him. He exclaims that many things have changed in just 2 months. Manager Lee illustrates that the world changes at a dizzying pace. Suddenly, he says to the manager, you too, do you know you've aged a lot in 2 months? Manager Lee is startled and turns away. Then, he awkwardly explains that it's because of him that he's been so distressed. 10 years? Ah, it's like aging 20 years. Manager Lee takes him up to the room. He says the chairman instructed him to temporarily stay at the hotel. He also reminds him to take his medicine and eat well. He feels a bit cold here. Manager Lee says he will increase the room temperature for him and tells him to rest early before leaving. He takes a folded paper on the table and opens it. It's a guide support notice that he received at the hospital. It recommends that he assist in guiding the supermen at the medical facility operated by the national military. Until now, he still can't believe that he is an S-level guide. He puts the paper down and takes all the medicine on the table. After resting at the hotel for a month, the military personnel come. The military is currently short of guides, so they personally invite him to join. Manager Lee is annoyed and says, "Is this what you call a recommendation? Isn't it a compulsory draft?" The military personnel explain that there aren't many people who are both guides and have deep knowledge of medicine like Che Hee-won. We really need a talent like that. He turns to reassure Manager Lee, "It's okay, I originally worked in the medical team, now I also have to work." Although the manager is still worried about his health, he insists that after a month of rest, his physical condition has recovered quite a bit. He faces the soldiers in front of him and boldly says, "I volunteer to join." Before setting off, seeing him wearing a full set of sportswear, Manager Lee asks if he intends to wear that. He slowly unzips his jacket and explains, "They said you can wear anything under the blouse, and besides, I heard that guides treat experts by contact, so wearing this makes contact quick and easy." As he speaks, he opens his jacket wide to demonstrate the convenience of the clothes he is wearing. At the main office, colleagues start introducing the job content to him. Currently, due to the policy of exterminating the living dead, most cities have been destroyed, only the Nakon district where we live is intact. They have made this place their base, and then rescue the living in other areas. The rescue work is usually handed over to the soldiers and experts. The guide has a responsibility to guide the expert and treat foreign trade simply. He is part of Guide Team Number 1. This team is equipped to research viruses. So, there are a few people who are also researchers. After the introduction, they lead him to greet other colleagues in Guide Team Number 1. B-level guide Choi Suzy surprisingly says, "Wow, this is the first time I've seen an S-level guide. What should the first greeting be?" A-level guide Iyu Yejeon shyly says, "3 people greet and get to know each other." Yejeon reveals that besides them, Team 1 has one more person, who is currently out supporting. Suzy starts to curiously ask, "This is the first time I've seen an S-level guide, how do you feel? Do you feel full of energy?" He says he's not sure, it seems normal. Yejeon gives him a glass of water and asks, "You've never guided before, right? So today you have to try and get used to the new feeling." Suzy describes to him the guiding process. "You have to adjust the speed very quickly, because when guiding people who are not compatible with you, the feeling of being forced is dizzying." He starts to try guiding so he's a bit tense, he takes a deep breath, tells himself to focus and feel the energy inside him, then envelopes the other person. The process goes very smoothly, the superhero who he guides happily thanks him. He says this is the first time he's seen stability in such a short time. Receiving praise, he is extremely happy. At the monitoring center, the superior asks about him. The person in charge reports that he is full of enthusiasm, he will adapt quickly. They say although he just arrived, they probably have to mobilize him to go to Area B where Captain Kong Woo-jun is. The guide who was dispatched almost lost his life. Although they feel guilty because Hee-won just joined, they don't have any guide suitable for Captain Kong. 10 years ago, a few individuals infected with the Chinese virus began to appear, a red alert was issued globally. However, schools operate normally. Seeing his friend complain about having to go to school in such circumstances, Woo-jun thinks, because South Korea is still relatively safe and the more desperate the situation, the more important it is to maintain a daily lifestyle. His friend Woo-jun teases him for always dozing off in class and pretends to speak profound philosophy. He argues that he is at the age of maturity, so he needs to sleep a lot. His friend continues to show up, saying that he will stay this size for life, and he won't grow any bigger. Today is also the first day Hee-won started working at the school. The head of the department, Lee, drove him there, warned him to be careful, and then left. Suddenly, a zombie appeared, and a student screamed in pain. The zombie's eyes bulged out. He continued to open his mouth wide and growled as he moved forward. Okay, cut. It turns out it was all an act. Everyone gathered around to see the result and laughed happily, blocking the entire way up. Just then, the teacher saw and yelled, "Who is playing like that at school?" Everyone ran away in fear, and someone bumped into Woo-jun, causing him to lose his balance and fall backward. At that moment, a hand reached out and held his arm tightly. It was Hee-won. Seeing him staring at him, he said, quickly grab my hand and stand up. It was then that he woke up, grabbed his hand, and he helped him stand firm and sighed with relief. After thanking him, he continued to go up the stairs. Hee-won followed and reminded him, don't fool around on the stairs. Woo-jun asked his friend if he knew who that person was. His friend heard that he was a teacher from the new medical team. Because of the virus, the government will arrange a medical team for each school from now on. He said he thought he was a student because he looked so young. Not respecting life, his friend said, he's about as tall as you. The teacher introduced the class to some of the medical staff sent by the government. Meanwhile, Woo-jun was still dozing off in class. Hee-won saw and slowly walked over to him. Suddenly, a clap sounded in front of him along with a stern voice, don't doze off, this is a lesson you need to listen to in order to deal with the virus. He leaned his hand on the table and asked him, what will happen if you get bitten by an infected person? Answer in 5 seconds. He started counting down, 5, 4, 3. He hastily replied, feverish, breaking out in hives, his consciousness blurry, turning into a zombie. Yes, that's right, he knew it. Hee-won was satisfied and gently patted his head. In that moment, his heart fluttered. After class, Woo-jun ran after Hee-won to ask for her name. His heart was pounding, he stuttered, teacher, can you tell me your name? It's okay if you don't. Her answer left him stunned. Why does a student who sleeps in class need to know the teacher's name? I clearly introduced myself at the start of the class. Hearing this, he blushed and hesitantly said, so, can I call you what I want? That's fine, she replied. Just then, emergency disaster warning messages were sent out simultaneously. Discovering 4 cases of virus infection in Seoul City, Hee-won advised him to go home early. He cheerfully replied, yes, Dr. Teacher. Seeing her not understanding, he explained, because you're wearing a blouse, be careful on your way home. Hee-won shyly watched him leave. She felt that she had acted immaturely with a student on her first day of work. Many days later, the number of infections increased rapidly day by day. His teacher was engrossed in reading the news. Hee-won approached to reassure, it's okay. Dr. Teacher, he immediately called. He had decided to call her that. She herself didn't think it was bad. Hee-won explained, here is being thoroughly quarantined, so the situation will stabilize soon. His words somehow made him feel more at ease. She happily leaned in and asked, do I look like a teacher? His teacher said she was originally a teacher. She laughed and said, that's good, I was afraid you would laugh. The two gradually talked more naturally with each other. She leaned in close and said, anyway, with Woo-jun, I feel comfortable, is it because we see eye to eye? Touching on a sore spot, he forced a nod, but then kept saying he could grow taller because he was still growing. The two gradually became closer and talked more with each other. Meanwhile, the number of cases kept increasing from 128 to 535, then to 1574 cases. The situation was becoming more alarming. Until one day, when the two were walking down the hallway, they suddenly stopped, seeing the people around them running away. Behind them was a bloodied zombie rushing towards them. In the dangerous moment, Woo-jun took the initiative to grab Hee-won's hand and ran. However, while escaping, he tripped and fell, slipping out of his hand. He was shocked and hadn't had time to get up. Hee-won waited for him. In this instant, the zombie had caught up with both of them. He helplessly closed his eyes, but the painful feeling like in the data did not happen. Slowly opening his eyes, a bloody scene appeared in his sight. His doctor had used his body to save him, the zombie's teeth deeply biting into his shoulder. Hee-won tried to suppress the pain and said, run. Boom, 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 the sounds of explosions echoed in the building behind them. They had run to the top floor and locked the door tightly. We will be safe, Woo-jun said. Seeing him breathing heavily, holding his wound, he worriedly asked, does it hurt a lot? His face flushed, he grabbed his shoulder and asked, what will happen if you are bitten by an infected person? Symptoms such as fever, rash, his body was going through all of them. Hee-won looked at his red, trembling hands, tears welling up and said, I have changed before anything, I am a teacher, I am so scared. Hee-won tried to bite his teeth to suppress the sobbing, but in the end, he couldn't control it and cried bitterly, I'm really sorry. Can you kill me? He forced a smile and said, while tears fell. He was shocked and replied, what nonsense are you talking about? We are going to the hospital now. You will change before the rescue team arrives. Please, can you kill me now? I don't want to become the monster just now, if so, I will hurt you. So, Woo-jun hugged his doctor's face, looked straight into his eyes and said, how? How can I kill you? You are still alive like this. Am I too selfish? I don't want you to see me like this. Because I am too scared of Woo-jun. I'm sorry, so please. He took his hands and placed them on his neck. He really can't do it. Wu Jun hugs his teacher tightly. The teacher wakes up, he whispers by his side. His hug makes him feel warm and laugh. The two of them just keep hugging each other for a while, unable to distinguish whose heartbeat is pounding. He tearfully says, the teacher's heart is still beating so strongly. Why think about death? He immediately retorts, it seems your heart is beating even stronger. The tense atmosphere has also eased somewhat. When Woon sighs and says, the teacher will really become bad, huh? Wu Jun firmly says, you will also turn into a zombie, we two zombies will live happily here. He smiles and says, zombies have no consciousness so they don't know if they feel happy. He leans tiredly against the wall. Besides, if you turn into a zombie, you won't grow up. Probably never grow taller. He turns his face close to his and says, so you have to live. Close contact with him makes his face heat up, he quickly turns away, embarrassedly says. No, not growing taller is also okay. I heard that the virus has mutated recently so there are also people who do not turn into zombies and get better. There are also superpowers, the teacher can also become a person with superpowers. When the tired person rests his head on his shoulder, he replies, the probability is still very small. He quickly realizes his abnormality, loudly wakes up the teacher who is gradually sinking into a coma. Wake up, teacher. He urgently says, Doctor, tell me your name, the kids in class also didn't hear. I have been waiting a long time to ask you again. Hurry up, wake up, teacher. His tears roll long on his cheeks, he urges anxiously. He tried to speak, his teacher's name is Che. Before he could utter the next word, a loud explosion sounded, the building completely collapsed. A large amount of concrete and rocks fell on the two of them. He didn't know how much time had passed, the sound of the rescue team constantly echoed in his ears. The search team had penetrated the B-14 bombing area. We have found survivors. Wu Jun was carried away on a stretcher, he was still a bit conscious and turned his face to search for his doctor. What caught his eye was a corner of a white coat stained with blood, crushed under large concrete blocks. Knowing that person was unlikely to survive, he cried in despair. In the hospital, the doctor explained in detail about Hee-won's condition to the family. He had shown changes on the move, appearing as a guide with a very high strength index, which surprised the doctors. The doctor said, she will not turn into a zombie. However, due to severe external injuries, she must be treated by hibernation. This treatment method has not yet been commercialized. Hee-won's father cried helplessly, anything is fine. Just save my son at all costs. The doctor added, it will take at least 5 years. 10 years later, in the chairman's room, Director Lee asked, it seems Hee-won is about to wake up, you really don't meet her. But his father refused, as long as she is healthy, she will discover my face aged 10 years. Director, please take care of her temporarily. Director Lee worriedly said, Chairman, it's better for you to let her know the truth. He disagreed with his opinion, because it is said to be very difficult to adapt after waking up from a long hibernation, they will be lost between the past and the present. I don't want Hee-won to become like that, I hope she won't remember the day of the accident. I want her to live a life without worries, especially in this world. What about memories? Director Lee asked. It has been handled through the person in charge, it's like just 2 months have passed so it will be fine. He replied, looking down from the plane, the ruined and desolate city appeared before Hee-won's eyes. The pilot announced, we are entering Area B, Captain Kong Wu Jun is on a mission. He needs to receive guidance and carry out the mission immediately, so he requested guidance on the spot. After getting off the helicopter, he just needs to run straight to the marked point. Yes, he confidently replied. He felt cool, being an S-level guide urgently brought into the field like this. On the other side, Kong Wu Jun received a notification from the control center that his guide had arrived. The wind from the helicopter blew strongly, causing dust to fly around. Hee-won had to squint and slow down. Seeing a man vaguely in front of him, he guessed it was Captain Kong. After taking a few more steps, his foot tripped over a stone, causing him to almost fall. At that moment, Wu Jun quickly grabbed his hand. Looking up, he smiled and said, thank you. Seeing a familiar face, he was extremely surprised. He shakily let go of his hand, stood still staring at the person in front of him, then hesitated and said, Doctor. Hee-won didn't understand what he was saying. He was rummaging for his name tag and said, not a doctor, who are you? He asked shakily. He showed him his name tag and said, I am a guide, the guide in charge of Captain Kong Wu Jun this time, named Che Hee-won. Seeing his face not looking good, he worriedly asked, hey, Captain Kong Wu Jun, are you okay? Your face doesn't look good, you need guidance now. He grabbed his hands, noticing his hands were colder than usual, he asked, how long has it been since you were properly guided? He was still very shocked to see someone with a face similar to his doctor. Suddenly he pushed his hand away, took a few steps back, then turned around and left, ignoring his loud shout, "Captain, you have to receive guidance." He was left alone, bewildered and not understanding what happened. Finally, he was led to the rest area. Because it is only temporary for combat, it will be more inconvenient than the headquarters. Many places were destroyed, so there are very few buildings left to use. Superhumans and guides are arranged in pairs and share a space. Therefore, he and Captain Kong will stay here together. Just having gone through the incident earlier, he felt it was a bit inconvenient for the two to live together, but luckily after 2 days, he was able to return to the headquarters. After the other person left, he sat down on the sofa, put his hand on his forehead and thought, not knowing what had just happened. It wasn't the first time he was guided, it was as if he saw something unbelievable. He sat up, took his laptop out of his bag, then tidied his hair, adjusted his voice and started recording a video. October 8, 2069, 45 days since I woke up from hibernation, there are no side effects, I am also taking medicine regularly. I'm still not used to working as a guide, if I think this is a job to help people, it seems quite meaningful. I met the expert I was in charge of today, I don't know if we can live in harmony. He looked straight at the screen, loudly criticized, isn't it too much to leave the guide alone in a dangerous area? Even so, I still have to try my best as a guide. Today's video report ends here. After reporting, I also finished taking the medicine, he sighed with relief and lay down on the sofa. Everything is fine except for feeling sleepy after taking the medicine, he drowsily thought he should ask the doctor to change the medicine. He just fell asleep until it was almost evening. At this time, the temperature had dropped, he curled up because of the cold. Kong Woo-jun returned in an unstable condition, automatically moved closer to where he was lying, he opened his eyes and was startled to realize it was Captain Kong. "Captain Kong, can you hear me?" However, Woo-jun was no longer sober, his breath was heavy, his hand was trembling on his cheek. He showed that he was not okay, he had to quickly proceed with the guidance. His hand was placed on his hand, immediately focused on strength transmitted to him. Suddenly he opened his eyes wide, he saw that this was not enough, he wanted more, he used his hand to touch his lips. Before he could react, he had kissed him amidst the ruins of the city. Kong Woo-jun was madly slaughtering the zombies. His mind was very chaotic at this time, the person he just met, Guide Chae-hee-won. Who is that person? Why does he look like the doctor? The doctor is dead. Can there be someone who looks like that? Those thoughts kept circling in his head until the end of the mission. He was tired, reported the completion of the work and returned to base. He staggered back with a sore body after a long battle. Recently, this situation has continued, indeed it needs to be properly guided. Returning to the room, Kong Woo-jun tiredly took off his clothes. He was about to explode. Seeing someone curled up on the sofa, that person exuded the energy of a guide. He loosened his tie and approached. Though they hadn't met, he felt somewhat comfortable. In a trance, he placed his hand on the person's face. At this moment, Hee-won was awake too, guiding him while softly calling, Lieutenant Kong Woo-jun. However, he wasn't alert enough, he immersed himself in this healing energy. Like finding a cool, pure water source in a dry desert, he immersed himself in it. He drank from it, but it wasn't enough, he wanted more, he wanted to dive into it. Unconsciously, he kissed him, his tongue delving deeper. Hee-won was caught off guard, unable to resist, only cooperating with the person in front. As the kiss stopped, he continued calling, "Hey, Lieutenant Kong," but Woo-jun was still not sober, continuing greedily. The pace of guidance was too fast for Hee-won to push him away. After a while, he left his lips to find other wonderful places. He gently caressed his smooth, warm skin. Hee-won kept pushing him away but to no avail. Finally, he used all his strength to push him away, combining with a fierce hair pull, forcing him to stop. "I said stop," he yelled, me, that's it." He hesitated, then suddenly exhausted, collapsed on Hee-won's shoulder and fell asleep. Suzy had said, among experts, there are many dangerous types, especially those who use guidance as an excuse to play around or coerce others into sleeping with them. It must be decisively refused and reported to superiors for punishment. Hee-won still trembled from what had just happened, realizing this was the situation Suzy had warned about. He felt he had underestimated the role of a guide. Despite Woo-jun's uncomfortable face and heavy breathing, he couldn't bear to leave and continued guiding him. The next morning, as Woo-jun woke up, feeling lighter, it seemed he had been guided. Seeing Hee-won curled up on the bed, he approached to examine his face closely. The more he looked, the more he resembled a doctor, but 10 years had passed, so it couldn't be the same person as before. He can't keep guessing like this. He decides to call someone to inquire about his identity. The person on the other end teases, why? That's a crime, you know. You shouldn't teach your successor to do that. He says, just do it, and hangs up before the other person can respond. After the call, he returns to the room. By now, Chae-hee-won has woken up. They face each other, not knowing what to say. Chae-hee-won breaks the awkward silence. Did you sleep well? I guided you yesterday. But before he can finish, the other man turns and leaves, leaving him sitting there awkwardly. The young man can only force a few laughs, but inside he is cursing. Who guided him to soothe his explosion? Why are there people like this? Yes, that's right. If I go back to the main office, I must request a partner change immediately. Suddenly, a beep sounds from the communicator on the table, left behind by Kang Woo-jun. Seeing it ring continuously, he picks it up to answer the person on the other end. Hello. Hearing a strange voice, the other party quickly asks, where did Captain Kang Woo-jun go? Yes, who is this? He awkwardly explains, I am Captain Kang's partner, I am Chae-hee-won. So that's it, Captain Kang left his communicator behind? He finds it strange that Woo-jun wants to investigate the background of the person he is with. He continues, you must carry the communicator with you. How could you forget it? That's not like you at all. He immediately replies, oh, is it that important? He hasn't been gone long, let me give it to him. Wait a minute, it's very dangerous, the other person warns, but he has already hung up and run to find Woo-jun. Running outside, he looks around for Captain Kang's figure. Finally, he sees him walking in the other direction. Hee-won intends to call out to him, but suddenly remembers that he can't make a loud noise outside or it will attract the living dead, so he has to keep his mouth shut. So he hurries to follow him for a long distance and finally catches up. He quickly hands him the communicator. Here, you forgot this. Woo-jun widens his eyes in surprise as a living dead is rushing towards him. Seeing him suddenly raise his hand, he turns around. There is a living dead floating in the air, growling terrifyingly with a creaking neck. He uses his power to squeeze its neck. Blood splatters from the living dead, splashing on his face and clothes. Hee-won is scared. He doesn't know when this living dead started following him. But at this moment, Woo-jun passes by him and says, you go back. You're in my way, so get out of here quickly. He meant well, but was coldly told so. Hee-won angrily chased after him to retort. Being in the way, hey, Captain Kang Woo-jun, for someone who tried their best to guide me when there was a risk of explosion, this attitude is not right. What you did to me yesterday, because it was too embarrassing, and seeing you staring at me, I don't want to talk about last night anymore. He raised the communicator and continued, even now, I brought you the communicator that you forgot. How are you looking at the person who helped you? If you told me to stay, I wouldn't bother. He angrily pushed the communicator towards him and decisively turned around to leave. However, because he was too scared of what happened earlier, his legs had no strength left and he fell down trembling. His face was flushed with embarrassment. He got up, reflexively, he immediately thanked him. But suddenly remembering that he was angry at him when he kissed him, he turned around and left. Hearing the sound of steady footsteps behind him, thinking that he was following him, he paused to see what was happening. Woo-jun stared at his blood-stained blouse, suddenly stepped forward, grabbed the collar and said, take this off, I hate seeing blood. Glancing at his reddened neck, he immediately let go and walked away. Although annoyed that he kept making others do this and that, he obediently took off his shirt. When he took off his shirt, he discovered that the shirt was quite bloody and so was his face. He realized that Woo-jun, although a strange person, seemed to be a good expert, who could suddenly attack a living corpse with a twist of the neck. While walking, he suddenly stopped and fell to the ground. Hearing the sound of falling, he immediately turned his head to look, thinking that he was weak like before. He stepped forward and raised his hand to help him stand up. He stuttered, Captain, is this also a living corpse? Something very scary was holding onto his trouser leg, a long arm connected from many living corpse arms. Woo-jun immediately used his strength to throw off the creepy arm that was holding him. Don't leave me, he said, as he shielded in front to protect his partner. From under the rubble, that strange arm began to stretch out again. He had heard about the mutation of the living dead in a recent meeting. Their numbers were increasing, they could approach without leaving a trace, or transform into strange shapes, far different from the shape of a human. The superior warned seriously, because we still don't grasp the power of the mutant living dead, be especially careful when on a mission. So this is the mutant living dead that the superior mentioned. Thinking about the danger he was about to face, he decided to move his position. He hugged Hee-won tightly and took him to jump on top of an old car. He obediently lay still next to his arm. He says that this place will be advantageous for a broader view. Once he has settled him down at the front of the car, he uses his special ability to concentrate and observe. He quickly detects the arm of a zombie rushing towards them. He exerts his strength to hold it. The monstrous arm tries to escape from the invisible force holding it. Next, he performs a stretching action. Instantly, the monstrous arm is stretched to its limit. The sound of bones creaking and then breaking into pieces can be heard. They fall everywhere, creating loud noises. Dust and smoke fly everywhere. Just when he thought it was over, hundreds of zombies suddenly emerge from the rubble. This time, it's not just arms connecting with each other, but their entire bodies connecting to form a huge mountain of zombies. Looking at the towering mountain of zombies in front of him, he quickly stands up to shield him and instructs, "Stay close to my right side, don't leave." "Yes," he replies. He contacts the command center, reporting the appearance of mutant zombies during the exploration of Area B1, and requests support from superiors. The other party urgently replies, "Send it right now." "Wait for the order first," he replies. As soon as he finishes speaking, an arm from the mountain of zombies stretches out to attack the two of them. Wu Jun quickly blocks it. The bizarre arm deforms and bends, blood splatters everywhere. Next, he exerts his strength into both arms, creating a large source of special energy to attack the mountain of zombies. However, he can only destroy a few individual ones. The mountain of zombies still stands towering. However, thanks to this, he has discovered that because they are piled up and stick tightly to each other, their mobility is limited. Since then, only the bizarre arm has attacked. While he is still thinking about how to deal with the mutant zombies, an arm stretches out, quietly grabs Hewan's leg, and drags him away. He hastily clings to his back and cries for help. With just a flick of his hand, the arm breaks off and falls down. But around them now are dozens of other arms reaching out, surrounding the car. Cutting off one, another grows back. This way, it won't be resolved.